fingernails on or fingers on, you'll see areas that kind of don't make a whole lot of sense. This finger's not looking so great to me, but I can't really tell what needs to change. A lot of that'll make sense when I start scribbling. You'll start noticing shadows and everything will start to make sense. The key is everything has to be perfectly drawn before you start. Otherwise, even if you do the best scribble art of your life, it's not going to look good when you work on your piece, because it's just, yeah. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and dive into scribble art after this. So we've got our guy laid out. If you want to, you can draw some shadows to yourself now with pencil. Give yourself a little bit of control that way. Or not, it's up to you. You can do that the whole time. Sometimes it's easier for me to sketch in shadows. So whatever your brain tells you is easiest, go with that. I notice there's just like a little highlight there. So you can look for those. My finger cast a pretty strong shadow across the pinky like that. This is kind of like with scratch art when you give yourself a little bit more control with what you're doing. That kind of topographical map, if you remember us talking about that in class. All of these lines can be erased as long as they were drawn gently, so there's no harm in adding these nice, awesome shadows. Just don't press too hard. Okay, I think I'm ready. So I've got my hand. It's pretty much as close as I can get it to what you guys see. And now it's time to go ahead and start shading. So I'm going to take my pen. I always start in an area that I feel comfortable with. So for starters, I'm looking at this area right here. It's nice and dark, so I'm just going to go with the dark area first. So I'm going to make my little scribbles, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so that you guys can see it more clearly. The catch is real gentle. This will be a lesson in patience and sensitivity. You want to hold your pen very lightly. I'm not drawing an outline, I'm just kind of coming right up to the edge. Little baby scribbles. You can even do dots sometimes if that's easier. Be careful. Don't outline. It's just like scratch art. You'll be tempted to do that. I'm holding it very gently. My fingernail appears to be really bright, so I'm not going to do much in it. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. I can always come back and add more and see what I'm missing, but for now I'm just going to kind of gently, I'm leaving this area white. There's just the slightest bit of a highlight here that I'm going to try to include, so I'm keeping that area alone for now. It's nice and bright here too, so I'm going to try to leave that area alone. I can always go back darker, but I can't go back lighter. This is much less forgiving than scratch art. So if you go too dark, there's no going back. You can use the white gel pen, but like I said when we introduced the project, it's white and your paper is off-white, so you will see it. So it's really only something you do for creative purposes. There's really no fixing going too dark. if you go too dark with the pen, you'll have to go too dark everywhere. So I drew a little line there. I'm just going to kind of build up on it. I'm not going to lie, this is really hard. So if you struggle, it's okay. If you want to practice with pencil first, you can just a little bit. Don't get too carried away or you're never going to finish. But if you want to just kind of practice a little bit, that's totally fine. Just know that the pen is always going to be a little bit more aggressive. So notice how I outline. It's kind of a straight line, kind of not. There's a little inclusion of like a knuckle right there. Knuckle shadow. I have some indent in my skin, like there's a little bit of fat right there. This hand is going to be probably on a scale of 1 to 10. For difficult things to draw, I would say it's probably going to be a 10. Your actual project, though, when you start, will be a 5 or a 6. It's just not going to be this challenging unless you're drawing a polar bear or something that's really, really light. But that's why we're doing this, so that you feel very comfortable making sure you don't go too far too soon. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out just so you can see from a distance what it's starting to look like. So I had to draw mine a little bit small so it would fit in my iPad screen. But if you want to draw it a little bit bigger than life size, it'll be a little bit easier too. You also want to be careful, don't just do a bunch of shadows along the edge here and a bunch of shadows along here. There's breaks and chunks where there's highlights, so you want to go nice and slow. Okay, now we'll go ahead and start on my thumb. If yours doesn't look like mine, is that okay? Absolutely. Gotta remember that I've been doing this a while. Remember, this is going in your sketchbook. It's just for participation points, so don't beat yourself up if it doesn't come out perfect. The key is that I want you to practice making these gentle value scales, while at the same time building up the opportunity to have some observational drawings in your sketchbook for portfolio day or for when you submit your art. Even if you're going to pursue art as a minor, a lot of times the U of A and other schools are going to ask for a small collection of work, and almost 100% of the time they're going to ask for observational drawings. So you'll have this in here and ready to go, and you'll do such a good job that they'll say, oh my goodness, we have to let them in. Go slowly. You can see this takes time. I would say the sketch alone might take you a whole class period, or maybe 2. It took me a much shorter amount of time. Don't feel like it has to be done that quickly. So my other lines aren't this strong. Like I have a really defined line here, but my other lines just aren't that aggressive. So I'm going to be really gentle. Like that. Again, I'm doing those kind of star shapes where you have those kind of sharp edges, and then every once in a while I kind of come in with those like S kind of 8 shapes. Everyone's scribble art's going to be different. You might find that you do a lot more like dot kind of sections like that, where they're kind of like little N's or U's or things like that. Feel free, do whatever you want to, whatever you find is easiest. There's no right or wrong way to scribble art. As long as it's kind of sporadic and expressive, you're going to get it right. You'll also notice that the smaller your squiggles, the darker your lines, the bigger your squiggles, if you make them nice and big, they're going to appear a lot lighter. So here, for example, where it's white, it doesn't need to be that white. Come in and just change up the size a little bit. And so that darkened it a little bit, but not too aggressively. Same with here. Be careful not to overdo it on your fingertip. That's about all I need for now. I can always go back and make it darker, like I've said 100 times. Maybe not 100 times, but I know I've said it like 10 times. Okay, so there's this shadow here. It kind of comes around my knuckle. Again, I'm going to try not to outline. I'm noticing this area is darker than this area. So maybe make my big sporadic. I might not even need to make a line here. I'm going to see. That looks pretty good. I can see that there's a background. I'll maybe make this just a little bit darker along here. But I don't need a line here or a line anywhere else. You can see that this is the edge of the thumb just because the thumb is a lot lighter than the background of this hand that has this cast shadow. Maybe a little bit more love up there. A lot of back and forth. You just kind of notice things. So I'm going to come into some of these nice, dark, awesome shadows. Actually, let's finish the thumb. I'm going to rotate it just so you guys can watch. So I'm working a little bit upside down, but it doesn't matter. I drew out the shadow so I know what's there. I'll zoom in just so you can see it a little more closely. Okay, good for now. Alrighty, so now we'll go into the shadows a little bit. They're nice and dark so I can get a little bit more dramatic. There's definitely lines here, but they're just not that aggressive. I'm noticing there's that shadow, that line that I drew here. So I'm going to make sure I don't go too dark right here. So that I can go much darker in here.